and Ma'at, that means I'm offering you truth. I am Aust NeferKa, aka Nef, FKA Priscilla. So I want to begin today's live stream, which normally on Tuesdays at 7, we have the taboo series that has been going on. But considering in the last episode that I just did, I expressed to people that my grandmother, my vovó, transitioned, and that kind of just shifted the pattern. And I'm coming on today. Technically, it's not a taboos episode, but what we are talking about is going to be relevant. I wanted to still come on live, even though I wasn't going to do the taboos episode. I don't want to put any strain on myself energetically. And I felt like talking about the eclipse season is very, very important and related to taboos. So I am going to be building on some of the topics that we have discussed before. If you have never been here before, welcome. I am a sacred wisdom keeper of ancient Kemetic sacred science. I'm also a high priestess of ancient Kemetic sacred science, and that is ancient African wisdom. I am also a farmer, a revolutionary, a healing artist, singer, songwriter, and many, many more things. But most importantly here, I am the mother of Tehuti Ma'at, and Tehuti Ma'at is a revolutionary instrument that is designed or functions as a grassroots cooperative that builds cooperative institutions. And our goal is to bring forward the empowerment that is necessary to actualize revolution, and recognizing that the revolution begins inside. So we define revolution as healing, liberation, restoration, elevation, and expansion. And we primarily focus on the upliftment of people of African ascent through ancient African wisdom. And today we're going to be diving into the eclipse energies, and I want to offer support in terms of how to navigate the eclipse energies. And this is going to be rooted in ancient African Kemetic science. So I want you, if you are here with us live, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Thank you for returning and trusting this space. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in to the chat. I want to welcome those who are here. The great thing about being here live is you get to participate and inform the discussion. So, and I will also open up if anyone wants to go ahead and join the stream, because that's usually what I like to do for the taboos episodes. So blessings, Sister Simone. It's great to see you. If you're here, please tune into the chat. Definitely want to welcome you in. I'm going to just open the way first, just by clearing the energy. I want to thank you for being here, for existing, for choosing here, for choosing now. And most importantly, for being here and watching the stream right now, especially because the density that is permeating the atmosphere right now, just a lot of heaviness, a lot of things coming up out of the depths, out of the shadows. That is what eclipse season is all about. And eclipse season is here to serve us. So thank you for your presence. So just asking for a blessing on the communication that comes through me in this moment. I haven't done a reading for this eclipse cycle. This is me simply transmitting sacred wisdom and giving context to, excuse me, because Max is over here wilding out. But giving context to the energies that we're in right now and bringing consciousness to it, which is the best way to navigate eclipse season. Eclipse season has to be navigated with great care, and not everyone is conscious of it. The beauty of you being here right now is you become conscious of the energetic dynamics, and that is the best way to navigate eclipse season, is to know what is coming up, to be aware, and to be informed from within yourself. So remember, I'm just a reflection of you. So always use your intuition and process things from within yourself. And I usually like to exercise that even if I am sharing a reading. So I want to thank you for just your trust and you honoring me as a reflection of you. So I actually have some notes that I jotted down today in my journal, or yesterday it was today. Yesterday was the lunar eclipse. All right. So for those who are not clear on what this eclipse cycle is, I want to go ahead and just give you the framework. So yesterday was a full moon lunar eclipse. Full moon lunar eclipse is the peak or climax of the lunation or the lunar cycle that we are currently in, right? Every moon cycle, we begin with a new moon. The moon waxes into a full moon at its peak, and then it wanes back down into a new moon and begins a new cycle. Okay. So technically, eclipse season did begin at the new moon. And that was a new moon in Hatmihit, which many of us know as the constellation of Pisces through the Greek interpretation, symbolized by the two fish, right? And this symbolism is very important because we are in Hatmihit or Pisces season. And well, now we've closed that out, excuse me. We're officially in a new year. So happy new year, because I don't think I did a live stream since the new year. So Hatmihit is the last constellation or the last sign, the last energy signature of the zodiac wheel, right? Which is an energy cycle, the ecliptic of constellations that inform and influence the energy in our solar system, right? All of it being based on those energy spheres that we call planets. And recognize and remember, if you are approaching this from an astrological perspective, that ancient African science is from a scientific lens. So it is based on the astronomy as well as the mythology. So it's a very spiritual connotation, right? So it's holistic. And that's the essence of African tradition, African cultural thought, African classical civilization. So it's beautiful that yesterday's full moon was in Ma'at, because Ma'at is the symbol that best illustrates African cosmology with the symbol of the scales. And the scales of Ma'at are about equanimity, right? The balance, the wholeness, really the truth, justice, reciprocity, sobriety, propriety, morality. It's a very vast concept, and that's what I'm going to expand on today, because that's the lunation that we just moved through. Now, on the ecliptic, or the cycle that the moon moves within, right? Because everything moves in cycles, and our solar system is all based on movement. If you're interested in getting more of a foundational framing of the things that I'm sharing right now, I do highly recommend that you go and watch the Navigating Eternity astrology series that is also on the channel. And then we're going to be coming back with another season of the Navigating Eternity astrology series also, but that'll give you a good framing and context of what this perspective of cosmology is. Now, the moon has that ecliptic that it moves within, and there are two nodes that we know as the north node and the south node. And essentially, that is what determines the energy of the eclipse season. It's based on that axis, right? And it's always an opposite. African cosmology is based in complementary energy. That's why I said the scales are best to depict this tradition, right? Or this way, this cosmic worldview, because it holds both and, right? So the complementary forces and elements of the universe, right? So you have an active energy and a receptive energy, what we usually call as masculine and feminine, or positive and negative polarity, right? And I don't mean positive and negative as good or bad, but good and bad are also judgments that are existing on that axis of polarity. So when we look at the zodiac wheel, there are 12 signs, but they each have their complement. So it's really dealing with 6 axes. So the opposite energy is what makes it whole. So when we look at things in Ma'at, we always have to look at its equal opposite or complementary energy. So in our mythologies, all of the sacred science is depicting forces of nature in couples. So you always have a male and a female depiction of each, right? So That being said, because the lunar axis is now in Ma'at and Amun, which are Libra and Aries, for those who are interpreting it from a Greek perspective, I want you to recognize that this axis is very important around our identity, which is Amun, and our partnerships, which is Ma'at. Okay, so it's what's going on in here and how that's reflected in front of us, because all of our partnerships are connections. And Ma'at energy deals with one-on-one partnerships, right? So that is one of the greatest themes that we're in right now. Now, for the next year, this energy is going to be emphasized. So even though we just had the eclipse energy is not something that is one and done. First of all, everything is a progression of energy. So you always have to be in eternity with it and see what's behind you and what's in front of you, because it's a continuum, right? And we have to be aware that with eclipse energy, it lingers a lot more than other energy cycles. So when you deal with a shift in the nodal axes, right? So the energy focus shifts when the north node and the south node shift. And while the regulars in most aspects, when we're dealing with astrology, the axis goes clockwise or counterclockwise, right? So you begin with Amun, which is Aries, and then you work your way down to Api, which is Taurus, then to Tehuti, which is Gemini. But when it comes to the lunar nodes, just like the precession of the equinox, which is a huge cycle, right? When we deal with the large scale calendar that we had ancestrally, right? The 26,000 year calendar, it goes in the opposite direction. It goes clockwise to the right. So we go from the age of Pisces, right, into the age of Aquarius, which is Hapi. So we go from Hatmi to Hapi, which is going in the opposite direction. So the lunar nodes do the same thing. So now the lunar nodes are in the north node, which is the direction that we're facing and where life is taking us all collectively as a planet, is towards the direction of Amun, the north node. Clear identification. There's a lot of different elements to that I'll speak on, but because the sun has now just entered Amun, because we entered a new astrological year, the true new year, with the spring, with the equinox. And the equinox was on the 19th into the 20th, where we finally aligned back with having equal daylight and nighttime. So that point when the sun goes back over the equator is what balances us back as far as the amount of daylight hours and nighttime hours that we have. So this is very important because essentially, once the sun enters into Amun and we begin a new year and a new cycle, that shifts the energy. So I was expressing earlier that we just left Hatmi hit, right? Pisces energy. When you close out a cycle, there's a lot of shedding, a lot of release, and everything consolidates and you're beginning a new journey. And it's important to know that when we enter into a new journey, it's easy to feel like, oh my goodness. Because when we're exercising from a space of familiarity and strength, then we get to move differently than how we move when we're just learning something at the very beginning, right? Because it's novel to you, it's new, you don't really have your bearings, you're learning, you're getting your grip on things. Versus when you're by the end of the cycle, you have a lot of experience. Usually there's a lot more ego, right? Because when you have to humble yourself when you're new, right? And you're starting something new and you're learning. So there's that dynamic that's subtly there also, just in the energetics of where the sun is, Ra, moving into this Amun energy. The north node of the moon is the direction we're going. So that means the south node of the moon is what we're leaving behind. So usually with the south node, which currently is in Ma'at, right? The energy of partnerships, the energy of truth, of balance, of justice, as I said, we're leaving behind the lower octaves, right? The lower expressions of that energy, whatever our lowest expression is. And that's unique to each and every one of us because it depends on your particular star print, right? The where the sun and the moon and the stars and the constellations were at the time of your birth determines what aspect of the energy it impacts you and where and how. If you're interested in learning more about this from a personal level, I do want to encourage you. I could go ahead and put on the screen because I will put in the description, because this was impromptu, because I was like, you know what, I still need to get on here regardless if I'm not going to do a taboos episode and speak on this. It felt like necessary to do this before anything else, or speaking on anything else. So our next episode for taboos is going to be next Tuesday at 7, and it's going to be little white lies. All right, we're really going to be diving deeper where we left off on incest, pedophilia, and it's gonna be a holistic conversation building off the foundation that was already laid. But I do want to let people know, if they are interested in booking a reading, that you can go to coinsandcaris.com. I do oracle readings, and I do provide your natal chart, right? Your star print, and that can also help you navigate where exactly these energies are going to affect you. I'll definitely touch on that because I won't be in your physical aura. I use the natal chart, your birth chart, to give you more personalized information so you know how your energy is being influenced and supported during this particular cycle, or whatever your intention is for the reading. And again, you do it in a way to exercise your intuition, because that's the most important thing. Not to lean externally for external validation, but you can lean into a reflection for confirmation. And that's the way that I do my readings. I really don't like to make people dependent on me for connecting with their inner guidance. So that being said, it depends on your star print, depends on where you have Libra when you were born, which is Ma'at, is how and where and what types of energy dynamics you're going to be leaving behind. But in terms of navigating this particular eclipse season, I want to go in and talk about what I've identified as 7 elements of Ma'at that you want to consciously approach and be aware of. I do encourage you to do journaling, writing, because 1, the way it stimulates the mind and the brain. 2, it allows you to actually take account, right? Your accountability is contingent upon your ability to track your progression and what's going on with you. One of the greatest things that I love about journaling so much, and it's not everybody's thing, I know that, but one of the things I love about it is that I get to go back into my journals and reflect and review and see the patterns. So the last eclipse that we had in Ma'at was at the end of October that just passed, right? So October of last year was a very interesting energy for me personally. I can go back to exactly where I was, and I can see the pattern of what is being illuminated and what is happening right now. And I can continue that process consciously. That's what I want to give you the ability to do, or encourage you to do, essentially, because you have the ability to do it. If not, there's other ways you can do it. You can do video vlogs. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that for yourself, but being conscious of what is coming from the subterranean, right? The subconscious world during eclipse season is very important, because during eclipse season in general, energy is coming up to be dealt with and to be seen out of the womb space, out of the darkness, out of these shadows, right? And when I say womb space, that womb space is beyond female and the physical organ of the womb. I mean the womb space of the universe, right? The subconscious, the cosmic, what we call space, that darkness that's constantly surrounding us, okay? I also want to shout out Nguzu. I hope I had said your name correctly. With blessings and greetings, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Oh, and thank you, Sister Simone. Yes, if you are enjoying this, then go ahead and click the like button so other people can. I know there's a whole algorithm and all that good stuff, and usually I don't even speak on it. I do intend on being more intentional about promoting the channel and doing more of that housekeeping stuff. So I do appreciate you, Sister Simone, for lifting that. And excuse me. And go ahead and press the like button. So, all right. So we're going to go into the 7 elements of Ma'at. Now, eclipse season, you can move through it with ease and grace, depending on your willingness to humble yourself to what it is that you have to learn and change. Okay? Sometimes we want to double down. And that's usually when the lesson comes even harder, right? So I always encourage people, I like to go, I navigate the shadow realm, the womb space, I submerge myself consistently and regularly because I don't like things sneaking up on me. I like to be the one navigating that space. That's how I honor the part of my ego that wants to be in control. So I intentionally take myself there, and that allows me to have a deep familiarity with that space. I talked about in the last Taboos episode the Duat, which is the astral realm, right? This womb space, this darkness. And I talked about how symbolically it's the 12 hours of the night. And there's so much science to that I'm not going to elaborate on. I do encourage you, if you're interested in the science, because it is something that I have to hold sacred. Most of that in-depth science is shared behind the militia, right? The membership program. So if you want to join the Tehuti Ma'at Militia, it's our membership program. We have 3 tiers of membership. And depending on your desire of engagement, you can join and you get access to our member exclusive opportunities, such as our healing ciphers, our community connect, and our warrior workout. And you can also, so we have a warrior workout coming up this Saturday. We have our community connect, and then the 31st we have our warrior workout. So those are member exclusive gatherings. And then whenever we do workshops and things of that nature, if you're in the Empire rank, which is the mid tier, then you also get free access to our workshops and classes. If you're a Kingdom member, then you get a discount and you get access to the other things. So I'll also be doing a video soon just talking about that. But you could go to tehutimat.org/join. Okay. And it's a virtual community. You get access to our private server where we have different chat channels and we build and share raw sources and archives and all that good stuff. So that being said, as I said, we're going to go into what I would consider more so the surface level to me, right? Being introduced to this knowledge, this is very potent, deep information regardless, but I like to go real in depth even more. But consider these the 7 elements of Ma'at, right? And like I said, Ma'at is truth. It's wholeness, right? And it's important to recognize that we're looking at this from an African-centered perspective. There is no individual truths for each of us. There is one truth, which requires us to acknowledge the truth in all others and their perspectives, right? Because there's space for the lie to exist within the truth, because a lie can be part of the truth. But usually, when we say we want the whole truth, we want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Because the only thing that makes it true is the fact that it's whole. So when we limit ourselves or we put blinders on because we don't want to deal with other people's perspectives, we're not able to fully be in that whole perspective that is available to us, right? Because we'll never be able to gain every single person on the planet's point of view, but what's in your life is what you are responsible for. You're able to respond to what is presently in your life. And right now, during this eclipse energy that's going to be influencing us for the next year, you do want to be aware, especially within the next 6-month window. So the next 6 moon cycles, all these themes and patterns that are coming up are going to be even more relevant and begin and continue to unfold in the most potent ways, and then reach their completion within the next year. So themes that are coming up around our emotional connections, the things that we're transforming around our connections and relationships, the ways that we show up in partnerships and in relationships, all of those things are going to be coming up, right? So we're moving away from relationships that are not in alignment with where we're going. And we're embracing the relationships that are ready to grow with us and actually showing us where we need to grow. And sometimes it's hard because we have to have discernment to know what is not serving us and is done and we're complete with, and what is moving us forward, what is challenging us, essentially, strengthening us in order to be ready or to move in the direction of where that north node is pulling us, Amun, right? Which is symbolized by the ram, by the way. So Amun, being on the opposite side of Ma'at, is about our identity. It's about where we stand within ourselves, how we assert ourselves. It's the first sign in the zodiac wheel. So it's a very sparked energy. It doesn't necessarily process in depth, but it moves off of impulse. And that's the beauty of it, but that can also be the detriment. So with all energies, you try to find the equilibrium and synthesize, which is the essence of Ma'at. You take both sides or the two aspects of complementary energy, and you have to synthesize to choose what is best, right? And it's not that one thing or one side or one choice is always best. You can only choose what's best for right now and what's best for you, because Ma'at is a moral inventory you do on yourself. So that's why there's no space for judgment, because when we receive and we see that everyone around us is a reflection of us, and we choose to incorporate and not block ourselves through judgment of the truth that they have to offer us, we allow ourselves to expand collectively. And it allows us to see aspects of ourselves that otherwise we would not have the ability to see. I always describe it as going into like a fun house, and you know how there's so many different mirrors. Think about every mirror, every person in your life as a mirror, and how when you walk into that space, you get to see the back of your head, you get to see the, you know, that right behind here that you can't see on your own if you're just looking directly. So every relationship, every connection, every partnership, every person that we encounter is that, a mirror. And sometimes that mirror can reflect things that we need and that we are. And sometimes that mirror can reflect what we don't want and what we don't need and don't want, right? Well, I just repeated that, sorry. So that being said, I want to because stuff been shout out to Rashawn. I was hoping you did one of these because stuff been crazy. Yes, I also I would love to know what you guys have been experiencing, or at least some of the themes if you care to share. And I can also share the link if you want to join the stream. Let me go ahead and do that, so if anyone wants to join the stream, they can. But yes, there's a lot going on right now, and that's the nature of eclipse season. It's just a lot coming up to be dealt with. And like I said, the best thing you could do is approach it consciously. So this is coming up in relationships, but it's coming up around the matters of the heart, which are the matters of integrity. So literally truth and honesty. How are we showing up? Are we being honest with ourselves? And how are the reflections and relationships in our lives showing us the truth of who we really are? And the emotions that come up around that, and how we choose to embrace or try to escape those reflections. That's what you want to be conscious of, and not from a place of truly judging yourself, considering your journey is not complete, right? Ma'at as a judgment system, which is the first element of Ma'at I want to talk about, is judgment. So Ma'at is seen, depicted in ancient temples as the main aspect of the judgment scene when you enter into the judgment hall of Asar. right? Which is after a transition or each day at the completion of any cycle, right? You enter into the judgment hall, right? And your heart is weighed with the feather of Ma'at, the feather of an ostrich, which is considered the feather of truth. And it is judged, is weighed to see if your heart is light as the feather. And if your heart is heavier than the feather, then you have to seruj ma'at or restore ma'at. That's your responsibility. So it's a moral inventory we do on ourselves. That's why I was saying it's very important to see the place for judgment. When we judge others, it's a reflection of what is going on inside of us. And usually, if we cast a judgment, that same judgment, well, it's not usually, it'll always be cast back onto us because everything, what goes around comes around, right? So what goes up must come down. We must reap what we sow. So because we're seeing that thing in someone else, but we don't want to see it in ourselves, we project it onto that person. It may be true, it may not. But at the end of the day, the fact that we're putting a judgment on it and we don't have the full context of anyone's life or their life's path, their life's journey, it reduces our capacity for compassion in judging and characterizing something in a particular way based on our lives and our journey and our perception. But it's not that judgment, it doesn't have its place. Judgment has its place when a cycle is complete. Judgment has its place when it's about you. Judgment has its place. And also when it comes to you, there's times where it's not the place for you to judge yourself because you're still moving. You still haven't completed a cycle. So we considered every day to be Judgment Day. And what that meant is at the end of each day, you can actually judge and do an inventory on that day. There were 42 principles originally of Ma'at. And these were where they got the declaration, the 10 commandments, essentially. So I'm not going to get too deep into that. I feel like I've touched on this before, but essentially the judgment scene, the covenants of Ma'at are declarations that we would make at the beginning of the day. I will not kill, I will not steal, I will not cause the shedding of tears. And then at the end of the day, we would say, I have not stolen, I have not killed, I have not caused the shedding of tears, I have not wasted water. But if you get to one of the covenants or one of the declarations and you have done it, you then took an inventory on your own morality, right? And I'll get into that because that's one of the other elements is morality. But right now we're talking about judgment. So remember that judgment is what you see for yourself and how you see yourself in another and how you see for yourself. And what I mean by that is see for yourself. What we see in others and the judgment that we pass is based on how that works for us. I can judge whether this is appropriate for me in my life. And my goal is to do that honestly, right? So you have to have a principle or something to stand on, a code that is beyond the self, right? Which is why Ma'at is cosmic order, right? It's an order that it's a universal law. It's a universal principle, I should say, because the counterpart or the connecting point to Ma'at is Tehuti in the mythology, right? I'm not talking about on the zodiac wheel, but in the mythology, the reason why the instrument is called Tehuti Ma'at is because Tehuti is the counterpart or the complement to Ma'at. Tehuti is the masculine that balances the feminine aspect of Ma'at. So Tehuti is universal law, while Ma'at is cosmic order. Okay, so it's how the mind and the heart, right? Tehuti being wisdom, the mind, Ma'at being truth, the heart, our integrity. The other aspect that comes to the heart when the heart is weighed is the element of courage. And remember, we can only experience and create courage by embracing or confronting fear. That's the only way it exists. So it's also a polarity in itself. So it's important to recognize that the heart is where our courage lives. The heart is where our integrity lives. And the heart is where our compassion and our love lives, right? It's the muscle that governs and circulates our life force through our body, through our blood particularly. Okay? So it's a muscle, and it's muscles tear, and then they strengthen, they rebuild. Muscles can be stretched, muscles can be massaged, and you can do that symbolically, figuratively, and you can also think about that physically. Obviously, you can't reach your physical heart, but just even your chest muscles and certain postures and stretches that you can do to open your heart. And having an open heart is the goal, an open mind and an open heart, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and read what Brother Rashawn said. So personally, I've just been experiencing people not being honest, people not considering how they impact others, and has been wasteful knowing we have common goals we're working towards. That's been my circle. Yes. So also within Tehuti Ma'at, we've been experiencing pretty much the same thing. Just these themes coming up around what we're building and the accountability that we have to one another in showing up, embodying Ma'at. Because the goal is not to just know about Ma'at. The goal is you have to be Ma'at. You have to be in integrity. You have to be courageous. You have to have a strong and open heart to embody Ma'at. And those are things that we have to exercise, especially in this world, especially with all the trauma and the pain that we're healing through. And that's the essence of revolution, as I said, is the journey within, the work that we're doing within to embody these principles. So judgment is for you to see yourself and see for yourself. Truth. Let's go into that element because you talked about honesty, right? And everything that we receive is a reflection of what we give. So I want to invite our brother to also explore, and all of us to also explore, if we're dealing with people who are out of integrity, people who are being dishonest, we have to look within ourselves and see what we may be reverberating. What are we giving off that is bringing that energy forward? And I always remind us to ask why. We have to examine why. Why is this relationship in my life? What is it teaching me? Is it teaching me something, some way to strengthen my own integrity? Is it teaching me some way to strengthen my boundaries? There's something there, but it's important to be as honest with ourselves as possible and to lift ourselves to accountability, right? So that we can move deeper into truth. Because the truth being the totality and being holistic from an African context means that the truth has to be expansive because there's always more. So that doesn't mean we don't contract, because again, even the heart to pump, it has to contract and expand. The ebbs and flows of all cycles, like the moon, it expands its illumination and then it wanes back down and contracts into a new cycle of darkness to begin again, right? The tides of the ocean that are impacted by these cycles of the moon come and go. Our lungs contract and expand. So it's the essence and the language of nature. That is what Ma'at illustrates for us, right? So when it comes to truth, wholeness and seeing all perspectives is key, right? And that's the only way to truly see what is. Ma'at, in the context or the element of truth, is not about the judgment itself. It's about just seeing it for what it is, not seeing it as good or bad, just seeing what is holistically, honestly, truthfully, right? Allowing all of the aspects to exist. So what we usually think about as the opposite of truth is what's false, right? The lie. So the reason why I had to say that there's space for the lie to exist within the truth is because even when we see something as incorrect, there's an aspect that makes someone think that something is true. I'm not talking about from a manipulative standpoint, but even when it comes to manipulation, people who manipulate using lies consciously, those people tend to use a bit of the truth in order to use the lie. right, to manipulate others. So again, there's still space within that. That's why what we always need to seek is more context, more space, more of what's surrounding whatever it is we're looking at, right? That's always important. Ask questions, expand more, and see other perspectives, right? So think whole when we're thinking the truth. We're thinking about both ends of the spectrum. It's not either left or right, it's the whole spectrum, okay? And I just wanted to look at Brother Rashawn's response. True, it forced me to have uncomfortable conversations. I'm non-confrontational. Okay, that's interesting. I'll be curious where your Heru is, which is Mars in the Roman language that we use for the planets. Mars is the energy of Heru. It's our warrior spirit. How we assert ourselves, it's actually ruled by Amun. So my Mars is in Amun actually, but I could imagine having like a Mars in Cancer, which is Kepra. A water sign can be a little less confrontational, or it just it speaks to the nature of the energy in which you assert yourself in or feel comfortable in. So it's not necessarily that you would be non-confrontational, but maybe you like to confront things in a way that's soothing. So that's something that you could explore for yourself if you want to look into your natal chart. But yes, having those uncomfortable conversations, all of that comes up during eclipse season. And usually because the South Node, it's a South Node lunar eclipse, another thing that could be coming up within this next revolution is the past partnerships and relationship, because the South Node is what's behind us. It's what we're leaving behind. So it can be the emergence of themes or even behaviors and ways of being in partnership from the past that might resurface. We might start treating somebody in our lives in a way like something, it could be something new, but we might bring in old patterns. And we might have to see how those old patterns don't work for this new space that we're in. So it could be anything along those lines to explore and to be aware of consciously, right? The next part of Ma'at that I want to speak on is grace, okay? Whew. Grace. When it comes to the court, Ma'at, we always want to extend grace. If we want to receive grace, we extend grace. That's kind of a mirror element also to the judgment, because we reap what we sow. Grace is giving space, it's giving notice, it's giving opportunity for the ability to seruj ma'at, or to restore ma'at, or to return to the truth. There's always grace if we choose to embrace it, if we choose to take it. Because Neter, the divine, is graceful, right? So our ability to embody this aspect of Ma'at is our ability to extend that grace to others, right? Our ability to not judge allows us to do that. But when we move from a space of judgment, we can't have the capacity to give someone grace because we're judging what they're doing. And obviously all judgments are not necessarily negative. We could judge something as positive, and that could also put us in equal danger because we may open ourselves up to and give more grace than is deserved. And I use that word deserved lightly because really everything is in Ma'at always, right? So even if in this life we may experience things that we don't recognize, like why, and we feel like we didn't deserve it, remember we're in a continuum. So there can be imprints on our soul from other spiritual experiences that we've had in our soul's journey. So previous lifetimes, right? This could be ancestrally, which is the main way to really look at it, because we're continuing through our ancestral line. So there are things that we may experience that are based on the choices of those who came before us, which create the reality that we inherit and that we're born into and that we experience. So that's another aspect of it. But the grace piece is very important, because when we give others the space to move into Ma'at, then we're able to embrace Ma'at more fully within ourselves, right? Because if we're trying to be true, if we are being true, we're being authentic, right? And that authenticity is, I feel, married to the grace, because unless we adopt a narrative that's been given to us that's disempowering, that we are born sinners and that we're not reflections of divinity, then we don't hold ourselves to the standard of what we feel would be the best way to be. But you can only know that for yourself, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, that's interesting. So Rashawn said it is Cancer. Oh, it is? That is divine. I don't like to say crazy. I try not to say crazy anymore. I like to say replace crazy with divine, but that is divine. That is divine. Yeah, I had a feeling when you said non-confrontational, because that's definitely an aspect of it. Also, and then Sister Simone said that's deep. Not sure exactly which aspect you're referring to, but yeah, it's all very deep. And the thing about it is, like, everything is deep. That's how I feel. And by the way, I also put in the description, I did create, before I kind of tapped out to process Vovo's transition, before she passed, I had created a Instagram page. I reopened my Instagram page. Well, it didn't reopen it, but I started a new one, but I used the same name I had before, which is She's Too Deep. So if you are interested in following my personal journey, I'm just glad to have created the space for that, because I really have things that I want to share that I'm beginning to distinguish from, this work in this space. And it's helping me to see how to bring people more fully into the instrument of Tehuti Ma'at as a cooperative, because I find that people, or we all need to honor our individual identity when we come into collective group spaces too. So this is going to allow me to see more clearly how to create that and support that when people are coming into the instrument of Tehuti Ma'at. So that being said, we'll move into the next element of Ma'at. The fourth element is equanimity. Okay. So equanimity. Now, you know what would be good? Let me actually look up the official definition of equanimity. So, the quality of being calm and even-tempered, composure, evenness of mind that calm the temper or firmness of mind, which is not easily elated or depressed, patience, calmness. All right, so I think the best word for elaborating on what equanimity is or reflecting it is composure, evenness, right? And because we're in eclipse season, there can be so much emotional volatility, because the capacity for emotional transformational growth, we have to really contend with the energy of Sobek, the veracity and the volatility of nature, right? Which is expressed a lot emotionally. And some of those themes may be coming up as well. How do we keep our composure? Those things can be challenged. People are going to be testing you, testing your temper, pushing your buttons. How do you maintain your composure in Ma'at? And remember, when you're dealing with life, not just eclipse season, but life, remember, the reason why you can't judge yourself is because we have to be humble enough to life to know that everything that's happening is exactly what needs to happen. And when we move into this place from a place of judgment, we can easily see, like, oh, say you lost your temper, you can judge that as a negative thing. I had a moment of that, I think, yesterday. And I felt myself being judged for that, although I had consciousness around exactly why that was necessary. but you can't force other people to see that. And sometimes you can't even really force yourself to see that. You have to train yourself to see the divinity of every move that you make, because you're choosing what you need to experience in the truth of what is inside of you. And that's all you want to do. Remember, you want to experience that within the authenticity of what it is. So that's why you need the grace for that, because sometimes we don't give people the space or the grace to be who they really are. We may say we want that, but we don't have the capacity to hold that. So the grace is expanding the capacity of our ability to allow people to be who they are. And that being may be very volatile. It may be very not equanimous. It may not be honest. We still have to have the capacity and the grace for that. So that equanimity and composure piece is very important, especially when it comes to relationships, partnerships, because those reflections tend to challenge us, especially during eclipse season. So navigating that space, you want to create some supportive elements in your life during this next year to exercise composure. So you can explore creatively how you want to do that for yourself. Again, I like to do things very consciously. I told you the journaling and all of that, but it's really about exploring the emotions around it. Sobek, the energy of volatility, is symbolized by a crocodile, right? So there's an aspect of it that is cold-blooded, that is reptilian, right? And there's a divinity to that we have to learn and honor, which is why I said, do not judge it when it comes up. Learn from it, embrace it, because all emotions are cues, right? The essence of the gift that I have to offer in my specialty as a healer is emotional healing. Emotional intelligence is what I feel Tehuti Ma'at really honors, right? Because you're honoring the mind, the logic, and the heart, the love. So having that synergy and allowing both of those to cycle, right, allows us to stay balanced. So we're not just moving with our emotions and our heart and our passion, but we're also thinking those things through. But we're also not letting our mind hold us back and overthinking, right? I don't think it's possible to really overthink, but that's a whole nother topic. But sometimes our mind can keep us from moving too. So we have to have that balance, right? That's what the equanimity is. It's beyond the composure. It's the way that we have that equilibrium in our temperament particularly. So I wanted to talk about that. Now, the fifth element is order, okay? Like I said, Ma'at is cosmic order. Everything within our solar system is in a particular order. That's why we have these patterns that we can observe, and we can make predictions, and we can evaluate things with ease when they're organized, right? And that's how the systems in our body work. I always like to emphasize the word organ in organized. Our body is very organized. This machine is organized into various systems and organs that work and cycle together. So when we are thinking about Ma'at in the context of order, we have to also recognize that the order is something that exists cosmically. It's beyond us. It's universal. It's not necessarily something that we're creating. It's something that is created. So it's within us. When we return to our original nature, we're returning to that natural order. And that's what we're talking about. So the complement to that order is chaos, because without that chaos or without that volatility, you couldn't have equanimity, or there would be no word for it. There would be no need for it. There would be no expression of what those two things are. You would have to have volatility to even know what equanimity or composure is, right? So likewise, when it comes to order, it's the same thing. There's the chaos that if there was no chaos, there would be nothing to put into order, right? And the whole cosmos, the womb, the shadow space, the darkness, the subconscious, it exists in chaos. When we illuminate it, or when it surfaces, or we bring consciousness to what is subconscious or underneath our consciousness, then we're able to see, right, what it is and organize it, put it into order, right? See the pattern, bring the consciousness to it in order to, no pun intended, to see how it aligns in relationship to everything else, right? And remember, Ma'at is all about relationships. So putting relationships in their proper place, putting things in priority, all of that, those are aspects of embodying this aspect of Ma'at that is about order and maintaining order, or keeping things constructive, because they each have their proper place and everything is honored within that scope, right? When you have chaos, there's no proper place for anything in particular. So that's why it is volatile, right? So when we're not in truth, when we're not moving with integrity or courage, then we're in a volatile state innately, right? We're in the chaos. So to come into Ma'at creates the order, right? And so what we have to do to lighten our hearts, or to Seruj Ma'at, is tell the truth, be the truth, right? Have the courage, move beyond our fears. Those are the things that strengthen our hearts. And those are the opportunities that will continue to present themselves as this energy continues to unfold. The sixth element is morality, okay? And it was also brought to my, this rising was the first time that I had thought about, because my reflection showed me the origin of the word, or the etymology of the word, and looking at the morality, and the fact that we are moral beings, moral people. The tradition, the African tradition, is rooted in this morality, right? This connection, this accountability to morals, right? And that's what Ma'at allows us to also do. It gives us a moral compass, right? To determine and synthesize what is right and what's wrong. But when we do that from an African-centered perspective, it's not the same as it is in the Eurocentric context, where, for example, in European philosophy, such as Kantianism, or like certain things that I had learned in ethics, right? They teach you about Greek and Roman philosophy, and how you have virtue and vice, right? These are the sins. These are the 7 deadly sins, and these are the virtues, right? So these things are always right. And that's very important for us to recognize as being dichotomous. It splits things into two, and it doesn't honor the divinity of how in wholeness we can't cast a judgment, because certain things may be more appropriate in certain moments. For example, I like to use the example of patience. Patience is a virtue, they say, but when your house is burning, patience wouldn't be appropriate or correct or right in that moment. That urgency that normally is frowned upon, because the upliftment of patience as a virtue is actually what is the virtue in that moment, what's best and what's right and what's correct in that moment where the house is on fire. So it's like that with everything. There's a space for everything. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. All of our emotions have a space, even the most ugly ones that we usually don't like to deal with, like jealousy. All of the emotions are cues, and they necessitate something. There's something there always for you to examine and explore, no matter how grotesque the other side is. And that's what we talk about a lot with taboos, because in order for us to heal things that are taboo, that we want to keep in the shadows, that are judged and frowned upon, that we feel guilty about or ashamed of, we have to look at it from that neutral lens. And that's what Ma'at provides us. So there's a neutrality within that morality. And that's what I wanted to speak on. So Finally, the seventh element, which there are other elements that I could definitely talk about, but the seventh element that I want to talk about today is sobriety. Sobriety. That is my encouragement for how to navigate the eclipse season. Mainly because our sobriety, Ma'at is sobriety. And to be sober is to be fully present, is to be whole within ourselves. When we are inebriated, when we are using substances that alter our state of consciousness on a regular basis, where we're not able to really be anchored in our sober, clear mind, we are escaping or releasing an aspect of our connection or attachment to our body. So when our spirit is elevated out of our body or releases or escapes from our body in some way, because most substances that are used are to either soothe or escape, right? Not or, but and escape, right? Because essentially you're not dealing with the sober, clear truth, right? That aspect of Ma'at. So the sobriety is the way that we allow ourselves to be whole within ourselves and deal with even the unpleasant aspects of our reality. When we use substances and we release ourselves, other energies and entities, thought forms attach themselves to us. And then those energies want to expand, they want to continue to live, so they try to, you have a battle within yourself where this energy is trying to take up more of your space, and that can be what we call addiction, right? So we end up having this battle and this war within ourselves. So when it comes to sobriety as an element of Ma'at, sobriety is Ma'at, right? It's sobriety, it's propriety. Ma'at is the actual state of sobriety, because you have to just be with what is, right? So that's going to be the final aspect of what I'm encouraging for us in navigating this eclipse season. And for those of you who are here with us live, I do want to give you the opportunity, if you have any particular questions or any comments that you want to make before I close out the stream, I do welcome that. So I can give a moment to see if anyone has any questions about this eclipse season. I'll briefly touch on the next eclipse that we're moving into, which is at the new moon, the solar eclipse on April 8th. This is a big eclipse energy because the actual full totality of the eclipse, actually seeing the moon pass over the sun and create darkness during the day, is going to be very, very visible on our plant, on the landmass and the what we consider to be North America, or what I like to call the divided states. That in itself, because where the eclipse is visually or physically expressed on the planet, it does have significance, because that's where the energy is going to be the most potent and influential, because that energetic dynamic actually was witnessed on that land by those people, right? So when you think about it symbolically, you have in the daytime, night casted over the day, and then a transition. So in our ancient tradition, that was the myth of Apep. So Apep being the ultimate enemy of the sun, right? The chaos that is the antithesis to our solar system, right? Our solar order. That chaos has a moment where it defeats the sun, or it appears to defeat the sun. And then it comes forward. And the energy of Apep is a parasitic energy, right? So I want you to just think about that symbolically. I'm not going to fully expand on that in this moment. I'll definitely do a reading that I'll probably post For now, this is pretty much the reading for the eclipse season, but I want to do an oracle reading using the alchemical oracle system that I use based on ancient Kemetic symbols. So I can actually use the cards to illustrate and to allow whatever, Netter wants to bring forward and allow that to come through the cards. However, with this solar eclipse, there's a lot of misinformation online. So I do want to speak about that. If you're getting your information from Instagram, from TikTok, from other social media platforms, from YouTube, you need to use your discernment. You really need to do your own research. And remember, Ma'at is about truth. So you have to expand your knowledge. If you look at the Astronomical Society and their image of where the solar eclipse is crossing over based on the last solar eclipse that we had in 2017, it marks an X. However, there's misinformation online that's showing that location as somewhere different. I think that that's actually intentional that misinformation has been spread. However, it's important to note that location where both cross over is like right at the center, at the bottom of the divided states. So it's right over the occupied territory of Texas. And it's very interesting to think about politically what's been going on at the border, talks of Texas seceding from the Union, all of that. That's not conspiracy theory. That's what's actually happening. So use your discernment, because there's a lot of conspiracy theory, a lot of fear mongering around the eclipse. It's important to just recognize it's a major shift that is going to be taking place and a new cycle being born, because it is in Amun. Okay, it's a new moon solar eclipse in Amun. It's the first moon that is moving through or positioned at the constellation of Amun, Aries, the first sign of the wheel. So it's initiating a new cycle on an amplified level. So whenever we're starting something new, it means we have to have endings. So those are the things you want to be aware of. Again, I don't want to do the fear mongering and all of that, but things are going to be changing dramatically on this landmass. And in the spirit of Amun is the spirit of war. It's Aries, right? Aries in Greek tradition is the god of war. Amun in the Kemetic tradition is the force of the warrior, right? It's the spark, like I said before, symbolized by the ram. Think about how rams move and their horns, right? One of the things that I think is important to know about the science of the ram, again, highly encourage you watch a documentary or something, maybe on National Geographic, so you can learn about the nature of the ram, and you'll see why symbolically, ancestrally, we use the symbol for this era or for this energy signature. The ram actually has a keratin that it can its horns, when it hits another ram or it hits something, it doesn't actually damage itself. Like, it's built for that, right? So knowing that it's built for assertion, also keep in mind that it doesn't have a cranium the way that we do. It's actually so tightly nestled in that when it rams into something, the head does not, the brain does not balance or create any brain damage. So it's highly protected in that. And before it rams, it actually pumps more blood to create more of a buffer and protection within the head, right? This is all symbolic. So think about that. What does that mean? Sometimes when we have to assert ourselves, there may be a buildup that we have to do. That's why usually our heart begins to pound more when we have to assert ourselves, right? You feel it viscerally in your body. So there's a process of preparation that happens, even if it's subtly. So if we recognize and we know what is about to shift in our own lives, but also we're dealing with something collectively, a solar eclipse is going to be experienced for this whole country and other, I believe, in Central America also. In Mexico, there may be some locations, if I recall correctly. But again, I encourage you to go look at the map yourself. Don't just take people's word for anything. take your energy and use your discernment, get more information, and use that to guide you. That's very important. So again, I don't know if anyone has any final questions or anything in closing. If not, I do want to thank you, Brother Rashawn. Thank you. I appreciate you. I'm your reflection. And it's my honor. It's a privilege, and it brings me joy and fulfillment to use my voice and to share this wisdom and for it to be valued by those who show up. So again, if you are interested in more information about in this regard or personalized through a reading, we also have our sister Danny, who is an astrologer, and she can actually do your astrological consultation as well. Those things are available at coinsandcaris.com. And if you want to support the stream, I want to encourage you. Oops, that's not the Cash App you should use. Sorry. I want to encourage you to Cash App a donation to Tehuti Ma'at. So $ Tehuti Ma'at World. If you found the information that was shared valuable, if you want to support the work that we're doing, and again, if you are interested in joining us, that's another way that you can support our work, even at the Kingdom rank. But again, just to support the work that we're doing, the stream, please go ahead and share your support. All right. Have a beautiful continuation of this eclipse season, and I'll see you next Tuesday for taboos. All right. Power.